Great. So I'm going to start by briefly introducing Navid and Pilar, who are the people who are co-hosting this with me, and then they can introduce themselves and introduce their guests. Pilar I've known for a very long time through the APTA community, and because Steve said they don't have to be narrative therapists, they can be, you know, they can be people. And I think I consider you a post-structuralist. So I wanted, and I, you know, I trust you with my life, so I wanted you here. And then Navid, I've met more recently, and Navid is a narrative therapist, and he's written some things, and I've been privileged to read them, and we're like spirits. So Pilar and Navid are co-hosting this with me. I will try to be decentered, and so I'm turning it over to you guys to introduce yourselves and your guests. And Pilar, I'm thinking you want to do your, what are we, our opening first. Is that correct?
Yes, we can go ahead and do that.
That's perfect. You, That's okay. Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you for giving us the structure. Well, Claudia, are you ready? With that. So, buenos días. Good morning. Saludos a todos y a todas, a todos ellos y a todas ellas. In this segment, we start with tuning to sound, because we communicate with sound, and we invite our whole bodies to be present here now. So just listen to the sound as our introduction to this hour, in which we invite beauty, gentleness, and courage. Claudia. Thank you. Gracias. May the world we weave with the breath we breathe bring beauty, peace, and courage in this hour. And now I invite you to bring an image to your mind, and then we'll move to the introductions. Is that okay, Vicky? So imagine that each of us threw a colored thread into the air with the intention of reaching the threads of each one of us gathered here. First Vicky, Navid, and me. The three of us began to interweave our threads, forming different patterns in each of the emails and conversations we had. When we formed a colorful figure to our liking, we asked Claudia and Nidia to allow us to send them our threads. They send their threads, and so we continue weaving colored figures together. In this hour, we are weaving together. Now we are weaving with all of you who are listening to us and with all who will listen to us after this hour ends. And just as we come together in a moment to weave with our hearts, minds, voices, hands, and with our breathing, likewise, at the end of this hour, our threads will untie themselves in the wind. The figures will dissolve in space and time. So we congregate and let go. We let go. We hold hands and let go and let go. Thank you to the organizers for this event. Thank you for your work and for this invitation. In reciprocity, we give back to you and to all who are listening. We receive and we give. We take and we give back, never taking more than we need so that we sustain our ecosystem of relationships. We have two intentions for this hour. Number one, to improvise with and within complexity. And number two, to come together and let go. Tying and untying. So I'm going to, Navid, would you like to introduce yourself and Nidia, and then I'll go introduce myself and Claudia? Would that work? Cool.
Thanks for that, Pilar. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Navid Zamani. I'm located here in San Diego. I'm a therapist working in a nonprofit with Middle Eastern refugees who are experiencing violence. And so navigating complexity, relational forms of love and not love are parts of my life and my work. I'm really happy to introduce Nidia Ramirez, to have her here with me. She's one of the reasons that I think I brought Nidia on. I met Nidia, I think, at least 10 years ago now. And one of the central features of my work is the politics of revolutionary love and the ways that we are accountable to each other and connected to each other through those through tough moments that require kind of some complexity and navigating of ourselves and the other. And yeah, Nidia has been a voice of revolutionary love in my mind. So it kind of just made sense to me as we're sitting with the artistry of our work in the context of improvisation. Nidia came to my mind, so I'm going to turn it over to Nidia to let her introduce herself. You're muted, Nidia.
All right.
There you go.
So my name is Nidia. Thank you, Navid, for that introduction. I am also a marriage and family therapist here in San Diego, and I work with a nonprofit, particularly with individuals who have suffered intimate partner violence or sexual abuse. So that has been my work for probably around 7 years now, since I started in the field. But I also work a lot with immigrants because I do speak Spanish, and that's where I've always wanted my work to be. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. I'm Pilar Hernandez. I live within two lands. My land where I was born, Colombia, and the land where I've been living for many years, the US. And I love them both. And I go north and south all the time. So I have kind of one foot and one hand in one place and one foot and one hand in the other, and I'm both. I'm also a mestiza, and I am indigenous, and I also have European descent. I'm cisgender, and I'm a professor at Lewis and Clark College, family therapist, and I also have a small private practice. And my dear friend and colleague, Claudia, is also an immigrant from Peru. And she's a therapist, sound healer, a singer, songwriter, an educator of the Indian traditions. And she has dedicated her life work to health and social justice, and has a deep commitment to bring peace and healing into the relationships between self, family, community, and the world at large. Anything else you want to say, Claudia? This is good, it's fine.
It's an honor to be here with all of you. Wonderful to see you, and thank you for having me, and thank you so much, Pilar, for the invitation. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Vicky.
So back to me. I did not know it was coming back to me. I was just going to sit here and enjoy the whole thing. So we had, as Pilar said, we had wonderful conversations about how we wanted this to go, or how we thought it would be best for everyone to participate in it. And what we focused on were what I focused on, which is interesting because Pilar and Navid enrich my thinking. What I focused on was the idea of complexity and improvisation. So what I will do is one thing and show you what I'm wearing that is about improvisation. I don't know if I can lift up and see it. I don't see myself full screen, so I don't know what that's about. Maybe, Nidia, maybe if you mute yourself for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm still not full screen. I don't know why, but you'll probably see this. So can you see what this says? Okay.
Oh.
So that's one of my mantras. And it's what I tell students all the time and what I tell clients all the time. And I had a client who came in with this shirt because the son and the family did improv. And I've always loved improv. I don't think I could do it. Well, maybe I could now because I'm old enough and don't care. But I think improv is wonderful. And so I said, oh, I love that shirt. So they brought me one. And, you know, I tell my students that we make stuff up. Nothing is really for real. And so we're going to be making stuff up now. What I'm interested in, what I'm thinking about is that the coronavirus shifted that for us, because now we have something that was made up for us that we have to make up how we're going to respond to it. And I think that's kind of the complexity and improvisation we're interested in. So I don't know if that reflects what we talked about, Navid and Pilar, but it's pretty much the best I could do at this point. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is turn it over to our wonderful guests that Nidia, one of our guests, and Claudia, the other guest, that Pilar and Navid invited. So Pilar, would you like to do the first round with, I think what we're going to do is, I don't know if you're going to interview Claudia or not, or I'm thinking you're going to interview, and then Navid and you and I are going to do a little reflection. Is that correct? Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
It's all yours.
Claudia, vamos.
See,
Well, we came up with a couple of questions just simply to guide this, and we're going to go wherever we need to go because we're really threading here with our colorful threads. And we asked Claudia and Nidia, how has your life become more or less complex or simple since COVID? How has complexity, simplicity impacted all your relationships, human and non-human? And are there lessons in improvisation? Looking back at the last 2-3 months, what have you learned about yourself and others about improvisation? So how does this resonate with you, Claudia?
well, it seems like complexity and improvisation has been part of life always. And coming to this country as an immigrant at age 18 and not knowing what was going to happen, truly, and dealing with so much of the complexity of the immigration system for so many years, as well as maneuvering through a very complete different culture, has put complexity and improvisation as complexity as as the context, and improvisation as a vital skill to develop for survival. And in this context with COVID is this global layer that is impacting everyone at the same time. So it's been fascinating to think about how to increase resiliency in our communities, how to increase and support the ability to feel an opening to launch through their creativity. In this process of being a therapist in community and understanding how to be now, the invitation continues to be, how do we support our communities to stand strong in the face of such an unknown? And meeting the unknown is, a, I believe, a position we have found ourselves always when dealing with challenging situations. So in a personal level, thinking about, okay, so how do we, I found myself putting concerts out together once a month, inviting people to gather to listen to a concert and being surprised by the complexity of what that means, learning about new skill, being able to use social media, as well as increasing, making it available to the people I work with in community and at large, and then seeing the result of how that impacts the bigger community. Being able to say, okay, so if we can do something, let's gather funds for this April concert and send them to the organizations that are locally working with immigrants' rights and taking care of immigration community as well as refugee community right now during the COVID. So again, accessing creativity to find these little openings, and through their launching creatively what can make a difference in these times. It is a very complex puzzle to understand what those openings are, but I do believe they are openings, and we are coming together like this, in this way today. This is one example of it, to launch that creativity towards the outer layers of community to support the remembrance of resiliency and the activation of it towards health, towards overall health. Does that answer your question?
Well, I mean, outside of the question, I think you're sharing a number of really beautiful ideas, and and more than ideas, actions. Because I know you. For example, you've done the concerts amongst many other things, and I'm just going to pick a couple of all the great stuff you just shared with us. You said complexity is the context, and improvisation is a skill we need to have. And you said that in the context of immigration, what that brought about for you. And I also heard you say we got to look for openings. what are the openings?
Mhm.
And so there is a couple of thoughts that came to me that I'm gonna choose one of those, and that perhaps resonates is that with you, and it's kind of a comment on a question. Um, is the experience of having lived in a socio-political context back in our countries where there has been social and political upheaval that brings so much complexity and uncertainty, and you just have to learn to live with the uncertainty. Is that something that somehow has prepared us a little bit? Not for me, not fully for sure, but a little bit to sit with this personally. And is that experience also perhaps a contributor to how we find openings and the kinds of openings we have found?
Mhm. I feel in my whole body, yes. It is complexity is not a choice to develop resiliency. You have to survive. And coming from a political, my parents and my family are social justice activists in Peru, and we have family members that have been disappeared by military throughout the years while growing up. My father himself has been in jail many times for social justice activism. Is this complexity of our communities. And I know I'm not an isolated person. I am one of millions. And navigating the complexity of the context we live in forces you to develop resiliency. And that resiliency is what then allows you to settle a little bit into the breath, because even though it's so devastating, life must prevail. Life must continue. It is not a question. It is a given. We must prevail. We must support and assure the continuation of life in whichever way we're able to. So, because of the context being so challenging, then you have to find openings where maybe somebody else might look and say, there are no openings. What are we going to do? It's like, we have to find the openings and launch through there all kinds of possible um, messages. So more, and I guess coming from the Andean traditional culture is more, we are just candles sparking light to each other's candles. So how could we become this active uh, candle then is going to spark inspiration, because it's just about that, or it feels within the context that I come from. It's all about sparking inspiration towards each other, and in the unknown, choosing, making it up as we go. What you
And
said, Rachel.
perhaps sharing your music
Make
the way you've done
improvising
it, that
as we can, pretend we are going to make it and making it, because that's all we have. We have to choose the best we can in the moment with what we have to prevail life. And it's really our lives on the line, our communities' lives on the line. There is no wondering, are we going to make it? We are going to make it somehow. I don't know how. We're going to improvise. But we have to know that there is within us the ability to make it through, because through millennia we have, and we will continue, and our children and our children's children will continue. What would it look like? I'm not sure, but I can't think about that, because I'm looking for the openings because there's plenty to do there. There's so much to do. There is, in this time, there is no time to rest. It's time to do. And we're putting classes together with decolonizing health to give people, communities, tools for remembering their own abilities to heal themselves. We have to activate our communities to say, we can heal ourselves if we tend to know in ourselves and then rely on that which comes from our ancestry, then is healthy to use during these times. Maybe not everything from the past is in alignment now, but some of those pieces, some of those tools, can we bring them forward? So again, it's the continuation of brainstorming daily. How do we get all this information to our communities, so our communities feel empowered and remember that this has happened in some way in some context before, and we have prevailed. So how do we assure the continuation of that, of life, really the commitment to life, forever and always, like always.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your thoughts, Claudia. I'm just checking in with time.
Thank you for your
Perhaps
question.
we should move to reflections with Navid and Vicky.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Pilar, because we can reflect a little bit, and then it'll give we'll give Claudia time to respond to that. So I just want to review how I think reflecting teams go best, or go better, or go well, is for the three of us, Navid and myself and you, Pilar, to talk with each other. You know, raise questions with each other, that Claudia can be in that listening, reflective position, and then go back to her and have her respond to us. Does that sound okay, Navid? Pilar? Sound okay? So the three of us get to talk. And one of the things Michael would talk about in the outsider witness groups is if an image came up, you know what jumped out at us from what Claudia was saying, what image came up, how it might affect us. So any of that, I'm willing to sort of step back and let Navid and Pilar say what they're thinking or what questions they have.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Claudia. I feel really resonant with your story, especially in the context of some of the music and artistry that you're speaking to. I think you were kind of plugging on this theme that kept kind of standing out to me around finding openings and then creatively launching. I love that because there's a couple like ethics or values in there that feel really important to me around. You said this phrase of like sparking inspiration in the unknown, and I think there's something about in that process of identifying openings and creatively launching the criticalness of like listening for those openings and the presence that it takes. And I think there's a process of like decentering that's required in that, where it's about the music, right? It's not about like flexing my skills or my technique or showing that how cool I can do the solo. There's like something like almost sacrificial that has been really resonant for me in this moment around allyship, like what it means to be an ally to communities in need. That really requires, I think, I'm kind of still thinking through this nowadays, but like the sacrificial component of that. And then you said something about like the complexity of figuring out what those openings are. Shit, that feels pretty central. And I just can't help but feel like I was just thinking about the criticalness in at least like jazz improv, and I think in therapy, like timing, right? Like, and I feel like timing gets swept in with like the assumed skill of all this stuff that we do, all the questions and the responding. But I just was really resonating with timing, creative openings, and how inspiration can be sparked within those openings. So thank you.
I'm going to bring one of the many things that resonated with me. I'm going to bring one up that has to do with how Claudia was talking about bringing some of our ancestral traditions back, bringing, like she said, well, maybe not everything fits this moment, but there are some things that will fit this moment that we can use now. And there are many Andean indigenous traditions that resonate very much with me and with some of us that have been really useful these times around reciprocity, around gratefulness, around rituals, around connection with non-human beings. When you were mentioning the importance of those traditions and sparking light is for me with all beings, all living beings, with the minerals, with the plants, with the animals, with everybody, reciprocity with everybody, gratefulness with everybody. And that's very rooted in many traditions, certainly in our Andean traditions. And that to me is grounding and actually helps to balance the uncertainty.
So I feel like I want to respond to you, Pilar, and you, Naveed, also. But as I look at my notes, I mean, what jumped out at me is also what jumped out at the two of you. But what touched my heart and hurt my heart is the experience of we must prevail, and that there's no time to rest, and the commitment to life. I mean, I so appreciate Claudia's, not only, I mean, it's more than centering herself in her immigrant experience, but it's bringing that to the work she does. And that's so relevant for who we are right now, who we've always been, but we didn't want to look at it. And so I appreciate the ethics of that. You know, that here is more of an opportunity. We always have opportunities, but here's more of an opportunity. They talk about openings that are opening to us. And so I guess what I'm thinking about, I mean, I have many images. I have images of fire, and I have images of windows and doors, mirrors, windows, and doors, which I understand is key to a good story. And the little openings that Claudia is talking about, you know, touches the mirrors, windows, and doors. So I'm really grateful for that. So Pilar or Naveed, if you have more you want to offer before we ask Claudia what was interesting and helpful to her. Pilar, do you have?
I'm good, thanks.
You're good. Naveed? So Pilar, you want to go back and ask Claudia, finish your interview with her?
Thank you. Claudia, well, how is this sitting with you? What resonates with you from these reflections?
I guess here's Vicky, something you said touched me strongly, because the experience of no time the experience of no time to rest is also a very challenging experience. The amount of and I do believe, and I see this in my community, that challenge allows for this intense, strong resiliency, and also this deep desire within to create more spaces for rest, because rest allows alignment, and alignment allows more creativity to see more of those openings. So it is this balance needed. Then at times when the context, like today, is so intense, then I am reminded about, on your reflections, this other piece around this incredible amount of, and I imagine all of us doing this incredible amount of energy moving towards openings, and then the orchestration that needs to happen so we all take turns to rest. And the need for that in the bigger community. So it is not just, yes, it feels like it is finding the openings, but also taking turns to rest, because only in resting can we really see the openings. Only in resting can we really, which is a nervous system that is calm, and then I will go back to nature as the most reliable resource of truth in our planet, then we can go back to a place of rest to then see more openings. And this is what we do as we're training to be, you know, working with indigenous traditions. There's always the most important component of rest to be able to see. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our whole being. And that means we need to, I need to, we all need to have moments of quiet. So then the openings are clear. So yeah, I guess that moved me with the way you spoke about or said the word rest, and the acknowledgement of that as well in this dance of resiliency within this context of complexity.
So I'm hearing, and these are my words, but what's resonating with me from what you're saying is that there is a different flow and a different rhythm in terms of moving in and out, or moving in and moving less in, or moving out and moving less out, where sometimes there is more intensity in that flow to go to those openings and you sort of put ourselves there, but there's also this need to slow down. And that slowing down is crucial to be able to be in those openings, be in those borders, and open them, but also be there, be able to stay there. Somehow it seems to me that one small lesson from what's going on is that we're slowing down. And it's not so bad to slow down. There's some gifts there. There's some beauty there in terms of slowing down.
And if I can say something about that, just
Go ahead. Can you
acknowledge
just speak a little higher so that?
Yes, of course. Yes. To also acknowledge then slowing down is a privilege. And
Right.
that is also a piece of the work, because we slow down when we can, and we only kind of slow down when we're not in danger. So slowing down as a privilege, and acknowledging then, if I have to play with images of possibilities from now, then we'll be having a balance between spaces, or communities. Our most vulnerable communities can rest, which means they have to have all the basic needs taken care of, so resting can happen, to be able to listen and see those openings. So again, it's a parts of a circle, feels like. Yeah.
Claudia, thank you so much. I wish we could keep talking with you, and we can't because Navid and Nidia, I want to make sure that we have time. But I just want to just resonate with what you said, or not resonate so much as reflect it back. That slowing down is a privilege, and you can't slow down. You have to take turns to rest. So I really appreciate that, and so thank you so much, and thanks Pilar for inviting Claudia. We now have a new wonderful person in our lives. So thank you. Navid, are you and Nidia, are you ready to roll?
I think so. Yeah, thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Claudia. It's wonderful to hear your stories. And yeah, Nidia, I guess there's a way that at this point I have a sense that you've had an opportunity with me to listen to the kind of the key and the timbre and the tempo of the music we're playing here together. So I want to kind of step back and invite you into some similar questions that you've already heard, and where you might want to find a creative opening into this conversation.
Yeah. when Claudia was speaking, it also brought up some of the thing, like experiences that I wanted to bring up today and some of the thoughts. And so thank you so much, Claudia, for sharing that. I was thinking about how, you know, this idea about resting and the complexity of right now. For me, because I currently I'm a DACA beneficiary. So for those of you maybe in another part of the country or who don't know what DACA is, it's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So it's for individuals who came here when they were young. And so it's not a permanent solution. It's kind of like every 2 years you'd renew a work permit. So for me, I'm kind of used to sitting in a sea of uncertainty. I've been in that for as long as I can remember. So I think the uncertainty doesn't feel so foreign, but then once you add the pandemic to it, it adds even more sort of curveballs to look out for. So for example, like right now, the immigration office is closed, and that means that a process that I'm waiting for is not moving currently, or there's more uncertainty as to when it's gonna, you know, go through. For myself and a lot of other DACA beneficiaries, we're waiting to hear from the Supreme Court. So every week there's an announcement like, maybe this week, no, maybe next week, no, maybe the other week, oh, it's gonna for sure by June. So in addition to that, when the pandemic first began, we heard there's an announcement from Trump that he's about to give an executive order on individuals who have some sort of immigration process going on. So I think like when I was listening to Claudia and this idea about like resting as a privilege, right? Like who gets to say the pandemic is now time for me to reflect or to get, not that you cannot get some gain or knowledge or reflection from a time such as this, but I think the privilege of sitting back and saying like things are slowing down and I get to slow down too, that it kind of reminded me about the complexity that's like I'm sitting with and so many other immigrants sit with, where like there's already uncertainty and then comes a crisis, and then it like that sort of crisis for us or for me, it sort of, now there's more things to look out for. So it kind of just made me think about that and like how there is not that time to just like sit back and relax or rest, because we have like, I'm having to figure out like, okay, what's going to happen next and what are the things that I need to take into account and look out for, so that myself and my family can be okay, and not just myself as me and my person or my immediate family, but my extended family. Or so we've created some like WhatsApp groups to keep each other informed on some of the resources that are happening, and then just keeping in touch, just to make sure that we're all aware of like what resources are out there, what is going on, how can we keep each other safe, even if we're not able to have that physical contact. And you know, and that's in addition to like being working from home, and then my husband also working from home, and us choosing for our family members not to come over, because it used to be our main childcare. So not choosing for them to come over just to make sure that we're all safe, and realizing like how dependent we are on those relationships, not just in taking care of our son, but like seeing them on a weekly basis. So just like how it's so complex and it's so many different like facets to it, that when I was thinking about this question, at first I couldn't find the words to really figure out how to share, because I was trying to figure out what do I share when it's so many different aspects to it. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nydia. And I realize, like you're saying, there's so much to speak to, and what we privilege, especially in front of an invisible audience in some ways, right, becomes kind of a powerful act, a courageous one in a lot of ways. And I wonder if I could ask you another question if I have time, Vicky and Co, and then maybe doing the process of reflecting if I have time to ask Nydia a question.
So I know we have 10 minutes and I feel really bad that we have 10 minutes, but let's use the 10 minutes. So go ahead and ask a question.
Okay, let's do this as fast as any narrative therapist can, I guess. Because I guess I just wonder, Nydia, just from what I know about you and the ways that you're involved in the community, and one of the ways that you've inspired me in my life is just commitment and orientation to community, even through times where, like, I don't know, I felt dismissed or disconnected from a broader community, I guess. And I guess I wonder, like, in the context of what Claudia was saying around this orchestration and kind of she kind of used the metaphor of the circle with the moving parts, and I was kind of imagining like the resting that happens, because I guess in my own work with immigrant refugee communities, like, yeah, there is kind of like a way where the community steps in to do the parts, like if there's abuse, right? Like I have no expectation that the abused person, it needs to offer love back or be in a quick reconnection with that person, right? That's where the community comes in to support that person, and then there's other people that support the other person, etc. So I guess I just wonder, like, as you've been in the sea of uncertainty that's been amplified by this moment with the pandemic, like what have you come to know maybe more about, or what's been like reinforced what you know about community and your own community, maybe in whatever ways you want to talk about it?
Yeah. I think I think right now that I've been reflecting a lot about that in terms about what I would like to offer my community during these times, or once I'm able to get back being more involved in my community. And I think right now I'm also like kind of looking for that, like kind of like you said, that there's moments where maybe a certain person can't take the lead because maybe they're going through something, so then you leave it up to somebody else. And I think that's kind of where I'm at, where I have taken some steps back from being so involved more, which I want to get back to, because I feel like that always energizes me, and that's been such a like huge part of my well-being, like being in community. And I think right now my community has kind of fluctuated with in terms of my family, like different family members, but I'm also reflecting a lot on like what I want my role to be within my community once I feel like I'm ready and I am at the point where maybe I've stepped back enough, and then I'm ready to then jump back in. And so that's been a big point of reflection for me during this time. And I think something I've learned is just like how much I want to, that like sometimes like not being able to rest, that and having to keep going and being in that uncertainty and like going from one thing to another. There's been moments where I've had to put some things aside to be able to keep going, or like almost not feel so much. And I think like being in this state has forced me to feel a lot of things. And I'm learning that I need to do that in order to then go back to my community, because that's going to be even more helpful for my community once I am with them, that I've been able to experience all, you know, maybe feelings that I've been putting to the side because I've been so busy attempting to survive in some ways, to figure out what is the next step, what am I going to do next to be well or to be there for others. So.
Muchas gracias, Nidia. I wonder if I could pause this there and we can turn to some reflections that, yeah, we can round out. What do you think, Vicky and Pilar?
Sounds good.
I have a thought that this is called fast narrative therapy, right? That,
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
that Navid and Pilar and myself can each have one reflection, like one thing that stood out at us, and a question that might come out of that, and then go back to Nidia. Is that
Sounds good.
okay? I have something, so I'll start in the interest of fast. So I think what jumped out at me is that when you're in that sea of uncertainty, you're always on alert. And it's like, that's so hard physiologically. And so I was just listening to Nidia say, I'm picking these notes and trying to find them. Nidia say that she's not able to rest. So she puts some things aside. And it's an ability to come back to, I wonder, this is my question. I wonder what it is that allows her to connect with her feelings and then utilize her community. So that's my one sentence or two.
Thank you. Thank you, Nidia. I feel you. And I'm picking one thing to say, which is one of the things that stood out to me from what you said is that I heard that you and your community have found openings for connection, openings for voice, and the image that came to mind was holding hands. When you said we have face groups where we can communicate, and we have found ways to basically hold hands virtually, so that we can, in my image is creating this, circle of holding hands. To me, while I hold on one hand the pain I hear, in the uncertainty, I hold in the other hand the courage that takes to create this circle of holding hands, of finding those openings so that people stay together.
Thank you, Pilar. And Nidia, of course, a lot of reflections to be had, but I'll just share one thought. Maybe it's a question that's not maybe needing to follow up with right now, but it just left me wondering, like, kind of similar to Vicky's noticing that there was a way that you're talking about like resting and also not resting within the same moment that I was really kind of appreciating. It kind of captures that complexity I think we're talking about. And there seemed to be some sort of connection there with that resting and feeling, and like what the role of feeling is, or how it kind of informs resting. So yeah, it kind of just has me wondering about myself, and maybe a question through my own life that I'd cast at you around like what your preferences are. Like, when does it make sense to feel? When does it not make sense to feel? It's a question I have that's really shaped by a lot of masculine discourse that kind of obscures how I think about that. So thanks for that piece. And if you want to respond or not to anything that was said here, knowing that we have maybe a couple minutes, if that.
Yeah, just thank you all for the space. And I think, with your reflections, like Navid and Vicky and Pilar, like, I definitely want to hold on to those in this moment, and use them and figure out like how I can use them as well, to figure some of those things out.
I am so grateful to all of you. When we put something together, you hope for good things. What you don't know is how wonderful it can be. And this is just so outstanding. And I am so grateful to all of you. I want you all in my life forever. So thank you. Steve, we did it with 2 minutes left.
Well done. By the way, I'm Steve, everybody. So nice to meet you all. It's such an honor to listen. You tugged hard at my Pacific Ocean roots, made me want to go home, which doesn't happen very often. So that's the best I can do to do justice to how much I appreciated what you contributed. Thank you so much, Vicky, for helping to create this. And I hope to connect with you all some in the future.
Thank you. So it's time to dissolve the thread.
It's time to
Dissolve our thread.
yes.
To let go.
The wave is passing. Yes, it's
Yeah.
heading to Southern California.